morning, everyone. How are you doing this morning? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so greetings, everyone. How are you doing this morning? Thank you, panelists. At least I had a panelist voice behind me. So, like Melissa said, I am Shinrai Gaston Sams. I'm the social work intern from Simmons College. I'm the graduate student there into my last year. Yes, finally. Thank you. So I want to thank you all for coming out this morning to participate in this women's panelist. It's going to be great. It's going to be invigorating. It's going to be inspiring, brainstorming ideas about what I want to do after I leave high school. What I want to do right now, actually, because I wish I had this when I was in high school. I wish I had students and staff members who were so engaged in, like, what is the purpose that needs to be done for our young ladies? What's the purpose that needs to be done for our young men? Even though this is a women's panel, men could get inspired also. Because here in the society, here in Boston, we need to be equals, do we not? Do y'all agree? Yes or no? Should we be equals on some level, or should we just play the role dominant levels and sexist roles that's put out for us? No? I hear a no. Can I hear another no, or do I hear a yes? No? Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you. So at this time, I will introduce our 5 wonderful Steps to Success Brookline High School students, who will be introducing our panelists. So I have Julia Estime, Penelope Cruz, Diana Pierre, Yama Estime, and Talia Voss. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia Estime, and I'm a ninth grade at Brookline High School. And today I'll be introducing Professor Katrina Huff-Lamar. Professor Katrina Huff-Lamar is a professor at her graduate school alma mater, Simmons College, and owner of Huff-Lamar Associates and co-owner of Collaboration for Life Advancement and Success, where she extends her services through therapy and consultations. Professor Huff-Lamar has worked in the field of social work for close to 20 years. She concentrates on psychotherapeutic needs of adolescents, adults, families, and couples, specializing in working with trauma victims and young adults. In her practice, she utilizes cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, recreational therapy, and coaching. Professor Huff-Lamar is an adjunct professor for many colleges and universities in the Boston area, such as Simmons College and Boston University. Professor Huff-Lamar earned her master's degree in clinical social work from Simmons College and bachelor's of science from Northeastern University. She is also certified in kids yoga, which I'm sure she practices with her son. Now introducing the one and only Professor Huff-Lamar.
Hi, I'm Penelope Cruz, and I am a ninth grader at Brookline High School. I'll be introducing Monica Leitner La Serna. Monica Leitner La Serna is the founder of La Sanjita Cafe, Boston's first worker-owned cooperative. She is a teacher, herbalist, chef, and business owner of Latino and Jewish heritage, who for the past several years has been committed to promoting social justice through educating people in the Boston area about nutrition, health, and wellness. She holds a master's degree in bilingual education and has been trained in holistic health education, herbalism, and yoga. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diana Pierre. I'm a junior in Brookline High School, and I'll be introducing Jessie Logan. Jessie Logan is a digital media storyteller, writer, and producer. After earning her bachelor's in psychology from Howard University, she went on to attain her master's in journalism from New York University. Jessie got her start as a working journalist and writer in New York City, where she PA'd on CNN's former flagship morning show, American Morning, and then field produced for the network's medical news unit. After relocating to Boston in 2005, she fulfilled her passion for working in public media, first for WGBH Channel 2, and then WR Radio, Boston's NPR news station. It was at WGBH where Jessie independently wrote, directed, and produced a podcast about James E. Guilford Jr., an African-American World War II Army veteran who nearly lost his life when his ship was attacked in the Pacific. It was a story that earned Jessie the very first Boston New England Emmy Awards. She's currently working as a digital copywriter in an international travel company and lives in Milton, Massachusetts with her husband, 6-year-old daughter, and 1-year-old black lab, Agnes, a rescue puppy from Tennessee. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yamanuchi Estime. I'm a ninth grader at Brookline High School, and I'll be introducing Karen Miller. Both an attorney and a clinical specialist with a master's degree in mental health nursing, Karen Miller has been a clinician, an educator, and a consultant within healthcare. And she has been a practicing attorney and legal medical consultant. Currently, Karen is the vice president of the Board of Community Mental Health Center in Brookline and sits on the board of Steps to Success. She's currently married to Leonard, who's a practicing surgeon in Greater Boston, and is the mother of 2 grown, beautiful children, a daughter and a son. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Talia Voss. I'm a ninth grader at Brookline High School, and today I will be introducing Adetola Ulantunji as one of our guest speakers on the women's panel. Adetola is an associate of the Urban Businesses Initiative team at the Initiative for a Competitive Inner City, also known as ICIC. She advises on the implementation of outreach, recruitment, application, and selection processes for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses. Adetola is responsible for identifying strategic partnerships and managing sponsored relationships as the program continues to expand. She also oversees the external narrative of the program from ICIC's perspective through monthly blog posts such as the Huffington Post. Adetola holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Economy from Princeton University, where she also minored in African Studies and in Spanish. Adetola's passion for community extends into her involvement in her Destiny Molders Church, where she oversees the music department. In addition, she is a member of the Young Professionals Network for the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Thank you.
All right, so can we give another round of applause for our students, please? And I would say personally, thank you, young ladies, because I know I have been a slight headache. So I want to thank you for your time and your patience of working with me. For a quick notice, I want to give a little maintenance notice. Can you please turn off your cell phones? Thank you very much. And also, students, this panel, it may run over, so we do have student passes to your next class if you do not have lunch. So that will be taken care of. So at this time, I will begin with our panelist discussion. Thank you, panelists, again. So first, I'd like to start off with, can you please share with us your educational background and which has led you to this point in your career? Oh, I'm sorry, anyone, sorry.
Okay. I'll start. My educational background, as mentioned, lovely, thank you. Really appreciate the introduction. I started my, high school and then went on to get my bachelor's at Northeastern University, where I was having a great time until my mother told me to go get a job. So I got a job at the Roxbury Boys and Girls Club and working with teens. Loved it. I was also like young adult teen myself, but really appreciate working with the younger students. At the same time, we're trying to figure out my major and going through that. And I started off with psychology, but then they started talking about biology, and biology is not my thing, so I dropped psychology. And then finished Northeastern, and I was in a working field. And so because they did the Roxbury Boys and Girls Club, and then I worked with homeless teens, and from there I worked with at-risk families, I decided to go back to school and get a master's in social work, because that's when I figured, like, this is what I want to do. Thank God my parents actually told me to go get a job, because that was the only job I was able to get at the time. And I went back to get master's in social work. So I went back to the psychology that I dropped in my freshman year. So I always knew I wanted to be in this field. And that whole educational piece, and plus my work experience, led me to where I am today, which gave me a wonderful foundation in growing into the career that I have today. So now I branched off in a number of different areas, so I won't, do the same thing and get bored. But it has been a very rewarding completing my education and having opportunities to kind of branch off in so many different directions as a social worker.
Okay, so I can continue. First of all, thank you so much, Talia, for that wonderful introduction. That was so nice. I was really touched by it, actually, listening to it. And thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. How you guys doing? Good. Good to see you guys. All right, well, the question was the educational background. So, you know, I wouldn't say that my educational background is as extensive as my colleagues here on the panel, but what I've learned so far, you know, I started in high school really being interested in history. That was a subject that I love studying and understanding how we got here. You know, what were the steps that happened in history that got us to where we are? How does that affect me, you know, as an African immigrant? My parents immigrated from Nigeria, and I was always trying to understand how does this history of America, you know, fit in with what my family's experience has been. So I started to think about that as I was taking history classes, and then started getting interested in economics as well, you know, my senior year of high school, and I definitely went on to focus on that in college. To understand how institutions can have a role on what's going on in local communities. I thought that was really interesting. So I started taking more econ classes, ended up doing a political economy major, which is basically just politics and economics combined. So, you know, that was really important to my career right now, which is, you know, economic development, community-focused work. But also, my family background has really inspired my career, I would say, so far. You know, because my parents immigrated from Nigeria here, you know, I saw how hard that was. My dad came here with $50 in his pocket, you know, with nothing else. He didn't carry anything, didn't send anything over, and literally started from scratch, had to eventually bring my mom over. And what ultimately helped them to finally get their feet on the ground is when my dad started his own business. When he finally did that and decided that he was going to take control over his own career, that's when they started to do better, you know, economically, and our financial position started to improve. And I thought that was so interesting growing up. Wow, now that my dad has a business, you know, more opportunities are happening for us. And I started to kind of connect those dots. Economics, okay, small businesses. I started to learn that small businesses really do have an impact on local communities, and I wanted to get more involved and learn more about different kinds of businesses and understand, you know, do I want to run my own business, or how can I help other businesses to grow? So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now in my career, and it, you know, in terms of community involvement, that's what I work on too. So at ICIC, we're a nonprofit organization. We're focused on urban economic development, really developing cities. And you know, that definitely came from my passion for understanding what small businesses can do and how they can impact local communities. When they're doing well, they're adding jobs, families are doing better, you know, cities are doing better. So that's what I do right now. I connect business owners to resources to help them grow their businesses. And historically, in underserved communities, there's not as much of access to these kind of resources that I work on. So my personal focus has really been to ensure that those underserved communities do have that access.
Hi, everybody, and Yama, likewise, thank you so much. My children in particular would be thrilled to be introduced as beautiful. I did not write that in. That was Yama's addition, so thank you very much. And thanks to the whole STEPS community. This program just continues to amaze and impress. And hello to all of you wonderful young women and a couple of young men who I saw kind of sneak into the room. It's great to have representation from both sides of the fence, for sure. How did I get into nursing, and then why, and how did I change careers after that educationally? I was one of 4 children and was told pretty much up front that whatever I decided to study was going to have to be able to earn a living as quickly as possible. There were 2 very strong women in my family, a wonderful grandmother and an equally wonderful aunt, both of whom were nurses, and powerful, significant women just in their own right. And I kind of wanted some of that. I wanted to be like them. And an equally wise person suggested, when I was sort of floundering and not quite sure how to go about studying or where to proceed, because there are a variety of paths you can take if you choose nursing as a career, someone very wisely said to me, okay, if you want to be a nurse, what you need to do is get a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. You need to go to a four-year college, because that will give you a much broader platform from which to leap, and at some point you will want to leap, was her message. Now, as a high schooler, you think one step in front of the other, where am I applying, where am I getting into? You don't think beyond that next leap. But I think, given the conversation a number of us had in the hallway before this started this morning, you want as broad a base, as broad an educational platform as you can create for yourselves right now, because I tell you with absolute confidence that you will change careers again and again and again. And I think there's been quite a bit that's been written about your generation in particular, who will more than likely have upwards of 5 careers within your lifetime. So you want to make sure you've got a broad-based platform. So that was very wise advice that was given to me as a young, really completely naive high schooler. I happen to love nursing. I was lucky. I was in a great college. I loved the broad-based aspects of it. It was constantly changing. I loved the sciences, even biology. There's something out there for everybody. But I love the fact that I could be involved in studying medicine one day and then surgery the next, working with kids and families in a community, the psychological aspects, when I was for the first time on an inpatient psychiatric unit, I was both terrified and absolutely mesmerized just at the depth and the need to understand the human mind and the body and how it tries to cope with life. So it was a great, in retrospect, fundamental baseline education, and getting the bachelor's degree allowed me to do lots of things. So my first job in nursing, I decided at that point, young, energetic, I loved everything, didn't really want to choose any one thing, and ended up on a medical surgical floor, and then immediately a position opened up in a medical intensive care unit. I raised my hand, I'll take it. And then a position opened up in a locked inpatient psychiatric unit in an acute care setting. I'll take it. And it was that position and moving up in leadership positions within that area that really catapulted me to go to graduate school. And that's what brought me to Boston as well, which is where I got my master's and was in another community that we'll hear about in a minute, at the East Boston Community Mental Health Center. And that opened up yet another whole huge world to me. I was working with social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists and making home visits. I remember one classic situation that really both, again, terrified me and also inspired me, is having to make a home visit to a young woman who was diagnosed as having manic depressive psychosis. And this is in the community, and she was apparently barricaded in her home, and no one could get in to give her medication, and if she didn't get her medication, she was probably going to have to be hospitalized. And I remember knocking on her door and somehow communicating with her and convincing her to let me climb over some of the furniture and come in and talk to her and give her her medication. Terrified as I was, I thought, wow, this is really amazing stuff. Again, one thing leads to the other when you end up, and I know we'll talk about leadership in a little bit, but I ended up doing something called liaison psychiatry, which is in an acute care medical hospital. Myself and a psychiatrist did all the psychiatric consultations, and I also loved that. It was incredible to work with a young woman who's having a baby who suffers a ruptured aneurysm and is paralyzed. Someone coming in acute suicidal behavior in the emergency room, and the medical staff not knowing quite what to do. So it was all the psychiatric issues in the non-psychiatric areas of the hospital. And it was that moved me into law, believe it or not. I ended up co-chairing a medical ethics committee with the chief of anesthesiology of this teaching hospital. And loved every issue that came across the table, but it was an acute care hospital, so we only had them for the limited time that that particular patient and that issue were in the hospital. And AIDS, HIV/AIDS, was on the table for the first time. That's how old I am. Back then, and there were all kinds of issues about confidentiality and should the staff know and who should be informed. And that's when I decided, I think I want to do even more. I've got this great medical background. I've had all of these terrific clinical experiences. I think I want to study law. And that's what catapulted me into law school. So more on leadership.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It's a hard question because some of us have had multiple careers, so what's inspired our careers. But to tell you a little bit about my background, I went to the Windsor School, which is in Boston, all-girls prep school. And I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible, just because there is really an elitist culture that exists in the Northeast. So I went to Occidental College, which is in LA. My parents were like, Oxa, what? Is that a dental school? Like, they had never heard of it before. But Obama went there for 2 years, so hopefully you've heard of it now. So I went to Occidental, and as a freshman, I took a class called Crisis in American Education. And that immediately just brought me right in. You know, what are all these issues that are happening in our schools, and how can we deal with the great disparities that are happening in terms of preparedness, the fact that, you know, half of Latinos in this country drop out of high school. So that's the questions that I was really interested in. And being in LA, it's a completely different demographic than I was used to. So I had to kind of re-educate myself, but also just gave me this huge scope of like, wow, the United States is huge, and there's so many factors, and there's so many different Latino communities within this country. So, you know, the issues aren't always the same. So in college, I studied education and I studied Spanish. And even though I grew up speaking Spanish, I'm a native speaker, right? So when you learn Spanish from auditory learning, you don't know where the accents go, or you don't know what, you know, the imperative, perfect, whatever is. So that was very exciting to me to actually be in classes called Spanish for Native Speakers. And I didn't even know that existed. So I majored in Spanish, and I also came out of college with a teaching credential. Occidental has a teacher prep program. And I was ready to go into the classroom, but both of my parents are professors, and they were like, well, you need to go to grad school. You know, that was really important to them. So I listened to them. I worked with an organization called the Institute for Recruitment of Teachers, which is for underrepresented people in grad school. And they helped me with the application process, and I ended up getting a full ride to Columbia for bilingual education. And that was also something I was really interested in for the Latino population. What can we do with, you know, the cultural capital that we have? Instead of trying to erase our heritage, how can we really incorporate it and integrate it into our person? So I went to New York City, got my master's, started teaching, and it was wonderful, and it was one of the hardest things I had to do. Wonderful in that, you know, I really got to figure out what my passions were, working with students, the families. I'm a huge advocate of bilingual ed, and I still do that in my current work. But the administration wasn't too thrilled with my methods, and I was fired. So, you know, in terms of careers, you never know what's going to happen. You might have this whole life plan. I'm going to, you know, retire when I'm 60, and I'll be taught for 30 years, and this package. And, you know, I had all of these plans. Fired, my teaching credential was revoked. I appealed it, got it back a year later, but in that year, I was pretty much out of luck. I didn't have my license. I didn't have, you know, any kind of reference from my principal, and I was kind of just sitting there. So I started looking to alternatives. How can I keep being an educator, but not necessarily a classroom teacher? And I found a program in New York called the Carrera Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program, kind of a mouthful. If you go to stopteenpregnancy.com, that's their website, and it's basically a holistic sex ed model. So preventing pregnancy not just through health and sexuality education, but also career preparedness, you know, mental health counseling, and I actually taught a career readiness class, which was interesting because I didn't have a whole lot of experience in different types of careers, but it was basically talking about, you know, financial planning for the future, how to pay for college, how much does college cost, loans, how to deal with your parents. And I really liked this model because, you know, we're not in these vacuums, right? It's not just about, one type of education. We really need to think about all the influences that affect us, right? Our relationships with our parents, those expectations, or our relationships, or the classes we're taking. And when I was in this program, I kind of had a realization that things weren't totally right with me. I mean, I was there, I was, living in New York City, 25 years old, by myself with a master's, making money. But there was stuff going on with my family, and I really needed to tend to that. So I made the decision to move back to Boston, didn't have a job out here, and I was like, I'm just gonna go and, make sure that the family stuff is taken care of, because that can have negative effects. If you're not well in all aspects of your life, it will negatively impact your career. And when I came out to Boston, I was looking at different jobs, different opportunities, and I found a job with the Cambridge Economic Opportunity Committee, which is a wonderful nonprofit in Cambridge. They do, it's basically like holistic care for impoverished people. So you go into the center, you need, to sign up for Mass Health, they'll sign you up. You need food, there's a food pantry. You need, any kind of counseling or whatever, they'll connect you with those services. This was a huge pay cut for me. I went from, $57,000 in New York City with a master's to $35,000 working for a nonprofit in Cambridge. And as you know, the cost of living is very high in Cambridge. But I lived with my parents. So living with my parents allowed me to take a lower paying job, and it was the most wonderful, gratifying work that I had ever done before. So I think for me, talking to you all today, money isn't the only driver, right? And in fact, it's not at all a representation of how important your work is. It's much more about finding what fills you, right? What that meaningful work is. So I think it's hard because we start to, associate our self-worth with money, right? Like, oh, well, you make $100 an hour and you make $10 an hour, so you must be worth, right? And it's not about that. The money is secondary. It's really about your passion, what it is you want to do for the world. So CEOC was a great job. I did, over 600 tax returns myself for free, which was really taxing, to use a better word. So I really enjoyed that model of the nonprofit, but it was problematic that it was an organization trying to help impoverished people and yet keeping their employees in poverty, right? Because $35,000 a year, you really can't do much with that. You certainly can't save. And then I also, as I was living at home and dealing with my family stuff and my own health, I started to realize that, canned food at a food pantry isn't really the healthiest thing. And, that even though we're providing these services, they weren't as impactful as they really could be. So in the midst of that, I started working with my family on a family business, which is called the Cambridge Karma House. And that's a short-term furnished rentals in Cambridge. And because I started this business with my family that became profitable, I used that as my seed money to start La Sanguita Cafe. So La Sanguita Cafe, we've been around for 3.5 months now, and we're Boston's first worker-owned cooperative. What is worker ownership? Well, let me ask you this. In the United States, you've got workers and you've got owners, right? You've got CEOs and you've got the people on the ground doing the work. What do you all think the wealth disparity is? How much more are CEOs in this country making on average? Any guesses? Like 10 times the amount? What do you all think? So like the worker makes, does the boss make 10 times the amount as the worker, 20 times the amount as the worker? Any other guesses? 100? 350. It's the biggest disparity between workers and owners in the entire world in this country. So that's problematic. And I grew up in Cambridge, and in Cambridge, worker-owner cooperatives actually started about 40 years ago. There's a place called Broadway Bikes. It's a bike shop that's also, the workers are the owners. There's housing cooperatives. There's the Harvest Co-op. So this idea of cooperative ownership and economies was new to me, but it also, I knew that it could happen. So I moved out to East Boston about 6 months ago. My sibling had been living out there for a while. And when I would go to visit him, there was no healthy food, and there was nowhere to even buy healthy food, right? You had to go to Charlestown to the nearest Whole Foods, which wasn't, where I wanted to be going anyway to get any kind of organic produce. So I found this spot where we are, 389 Maverick, if you want to come visit. And, I fell in love with it, and I just saw the opportunity. There was a lack of healthy food, a lack of awareness around healthy food, and I really felt like that was where I needed to be right now. So I think for me, it's been kind of like a transition of different careers, but seeing where the opportunities are and the impact that we can have on community through businesses. And then most recently, I had the opportunity to start the East Boston Meditation Center. And this was just being at the right place at the right time. There was a property available in East Boston on the waterfront. I went to go see it, and they said, well, until we get a full-time tenant, you can stay for free for the rest of the year. So it's 3,600 square feet of waterfront property in East Boston, and we turned it into a donation meditation center. And I think what's beautiful about this project, I didn't have time for it. My hands are full with the restaurant. I'm there, 70, 80 hours a week. But I saw the opportunity and I couldn't miss out on it. So I started, the LLC, registered it, and then, if you build it, they will come. So now we have 8 teachers, and we have classes every morning, afternoon, and evening. And this studio is specifically for the people that have not been incorporated or not been really accessed in a lot of yoga studios, right? Most yoga studios, $15 a class, it's not affordable. Able-bodied, right? You have to be able to move certain ways, and it's athletic, right? So our focus at the meditation center is really accessing elderly, disabled, kids, people that really need these services. And it's been pretty exciting. So on Saturday, we're having a health and wellness fair. You're all invited. And it's just been incredible being in this new community, but also the collaboration that's coming about. So, none of what I'm doing right now could be done without the help of lots of people. So I think it's really exciting that when you have an idea and then other people start to unify with that idea, you get so much done. So, on there.
Yeah. And I can echo a lot of what the panelists are discussing. Thank you so much, Diana, for the introduction and for being here, the opportunity to be here. So I would say that where I am today has definitely been a journey over the years. I never thought that I would make my career being a writer, because as a writer and producer and digital media specialist and storyteller, in the beginning, I had dreams of, like so many kids do, being a magician or a veterinarian, so many of those wonderful things. But when I think back about what I enjoyed doing the most, the images that resonated with me are the ones of me writing and telling stories and interviewing people and just getting out there and learning about the world and what's going on around me. And I really didn't realize that until I got much older. So one of the lessons that I think that you can take away from this is to really do a lot of self-reflecting. What do you enjoy doing the most? How do you identify yourself? What makes you happy? What makes you passionate? And what makes you get up in the morning and say, yeah, I'm going to go do this. In undergrad, I majored in psychology and pre-medicine. I thought I was going to be a doctor. But really, in my gut, I knew I was a creative person. But I didn't necessarily think that I could make a living off of it because I didn't necessarily expose myself to people that were making a living doing the things that I enjoyed doing the most. So when I really started to reassess and I wanted to feel fulfilled, I really started to think critically about where I was. So after undergraduate, I took a year off. I did a lot of self-reflecting. I worked at a bookstore. And then the following year, I enrolled, I moved to New York, which some people did as well. And I studied journalism at New York University. And there I really started to plant the seeds of a career in writing and media. And it just took off from there. I think there was a book that was published a while ago called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow, think that's such a key component of what so many people need in their lives. And so since then, while I'm no longer working for a journalism like a station, which I've worked for CNN in New York, as Diana mentioned, and also medical news. And I also work for WGBH and WBUR here in Boston. But after the financial crisis, I was laid off, but then I had to sort of reassess my skills and learn how I could connect the dots and see where I could take my writing skills and apply it in another position. So I really started to do research, and I think that's critical as well. If there's something that you love to do, but you're not finding maybe the right opportunity at the right time, do the research, talk to people, and find out how you can apply the same skills. I think exposure is really important. So I found that there were opportunities in marketing. And so I said, aha, I had an aha moment, and I said, okay, maybe I could be a copywriter. So I talked to copywriters, and now I'm working as a copywriter in digital for a travel agency, travel company in Boston. So there are so many lessons, I think, that you can learn over the years. If you have something that you enjoy doing, never forget that, never lose sight of that, because that is something that will bring you fulfillment, and you can always earn a living from what you love to do, because eventually it's going to come out somewhere. And I'd say that education-wise, it is a journey. You never stop learning. I'm still learning, and that's something that you'll do too.
Thank you all. So for me right now, I'm feeling quite inspired. It's good to hear some trends and some keywords that were shared, to have, you could go through 5 different careers. I'm on my 3rd right now. It's good to hear that there are times that you may get laid off, because my parents was in that situation, so it's good to hear that you have these professions and these education background that I can recreate myself on multiple levels. And for us as students, graduate student, undergrad student, high school student, we can always recreate ourselves. And it's so inspiring to hear that. So thank you so much. So I'm going to lead you to our next question before we go into a Q&A. And that was, what are some key pieces of advice that you would share with these young ladies about your career and about leadership? At this time, Adetola, would you mind starting us off, please? Sure. Thank you.
That was a question I was thinking hard about. Okay, I think it kind of ties to what some of the other panels have said earlier. Doing your research and just, I feel like when I was in high school, I just didn't know what the options were. I didn't know what the career opportunities were that were out there. As a Nigerian, you're told you can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor. Choose one of the two, and obviously those are 2 great careers. And one of which I'm still pursuing, so I'm not trying to put down either of those. But the more I've just done research, the more I just read newspaper articles about what people are doing and what people are talking about, the more I would talk to my professors in college and say, how did you get here? What were you doing before you were a professor? A lot of them have had extensive careers before they ended up going back to teaching. The more, I was able to learn that there were additional things that I could do and, connect back to what my passions are and what my interests were. So economic development was not something that was on the table for me when I was a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior at all in high school. I didn't really know what that meant, but by the time I was a senior and I started taking these classes and just asking questions and talking to people, I think that's what's really important. At this stage, you're young, I know at this point you're probably saying, okay, school, I just got to graduate. I just need to pass my classes that I'm in right now. And that's what, because my parents are telling me that this is important. I'm sure that's where you guys are right now. But I would encourage you, in this age of technology where everything is available on Google, read newspapers. I know that I don't know if that's interesting to you guys because I don't know you as well. Maybe you're saying, I do that, and that's fine. Keep doing that. Ask people that are your teachers and your leaders in the places that you volunteer or go to school. what was your path? Talk to people about how they got to where they are. I'm sure they'll have a bunch of interesting stories for you that you might not be expecting. I think that's really important. Just to always be hungry to learn. It's not just about the classes that you're taking. That is the bare minimum right now for you guys, where you are. Really just try to expand, beyond where you are right now, and just understand what the other opportunities are. And honestly, if you're volunteering in organizations, you might not have time to have a job right now where you are, but if you're getting involved in other things and like where you are right now, the more that you continue to expose yourself to different opportunities, the more different types of people you'll meet, and the more people you can learn about what career options they took. I think once I realized that was important, I was just totally hungry to understand, what did you do? Can I take you out to coffee? Can you take me out to coffee? Can we sit in the library before I go to my next class and talk for a few minutes? The more I started to do that, the more I really started to expand my horizons and understand. I know another question was about leadership. That is such an interesting word. I think we all think we know what that means, but I have had to learn what that looks like in my career so far. For me, being a leader, you have to be able to do the work potentially that you're asking other people to do as leaders. I've come to learn that. It's not just about saying I'm above you because I'm running this organization or I'm running this project, and therefore you guys are just doing what I need to do while I sit high and mighty. That's not what leadership is. You really do have to sometimes roll up your sleeves. You have to show people, you have to lead by example. I think that's a really important lesson that I've learned over time. And, with the music department, Talia mentioned that. That's one of the things I do outside of church. I work with a lot of people who are older than me, but I'm overseeing things both in my job and outside of my job. But the approach to that and learning a humility and how to engage people in a way that they respect you, not because you're telling them that you're above them, but because you respect them and you show that. It's kind of something you have to learn over time, but I think once you decide for yourself that, you're going to respect the people and acknowledge people that you're working with for what they've done, the more that they will trust you and, be willing to give you their best, if you're working with them as a leader. So I've learned that to really be willing to do the work. I would, in terms of being exposed to the career, I want to be at as many things as this, to really tell people that there are more career opportunities out there for you, and if you do follow your passion, you will find what makes sense for you.
Yeah, I actually wanted to share with you. Last night I attended a panel discussion, and it's a really timely moment. A woman leader spoke about her experiences moving up the corporate ladder. Her name is Karen Harris, and she just published a book, Strategizing to Win, and she shared solid advice on her experiences and how you can pull from what's inside of you to your own advantage. So she emphasized this. As women, particularly, we are so hung up sometimes on our performance currency, or working hard and showing how smart we are, which is all great. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we underestimate the value of relationship currency, and that means getting to know the people that can help you become the person or the career woman that you aspire to be. Don't underestimate the value of getting to know people who can help advance your career. Exposing yourself, like we were talking about, through internships very early on, so you can attain those partnerships early, people who can help advance you. So that was a message that I took away that I wanted to share with you, is always get out, even if you may be shy and I struggled with shyness when I was younger. But, you know, all it takes is a cup of coffee, you know, saying hi to someone, getting to know them, and figuring out what they do. And that's part of your research and your career and your investment in your career. So I just thought that that was a pearl of wisdom that you can take away as well.
We were talking about, oh, sorry, go ahead. We were talking about some of these things in the hallway before we got started, and just hearing you both speak, certainly picking people's brains, whether it's a coffee or whatever beverage you guys choose to drink at this point, and seeking as much information as possible. I also want to underscore that in particular at your age, at your stage in life, you needn't be afraid or anxious if you feel that you just don't know what you want to do. You're just not quite sure which direction to take. And I think we collectively would probably all choose to tell you that if you just proceed through life with a genuine sense of curiosity, a genuine sense of interest in the world around you and the people that you happen to be surrounded by, you'll find within you what's particularly unique, special, maybe even might evolve into a passion within each of you for sure. So at your age, at your stage, I would underscore that, and then never let go of it. Never let go of it. Hold on to that curiosity and that interest, no matter what age and stage you are in life, and no matter what your career or profession, because I think you'll find and hear from all of us that we've jumped around, we've moved a lot, we've changed identities almost completely, and it sounds like one is yet another on the way. And then just one more aspect about leadership, and then is there are all kinds of leaders in the world, and thank goodness, because there are all kinds of personalities and individuals and takes, and some more creative than the others. But I think for me in particular, given the 2 careers that I've been involved with and the number of different things within each of those careers that I've done, I think the most successful leadership strategies I've found is when you really listen, I mean really listen to the people that you're working with, when you really get to know who it is that you're collaborating with and understand where they're coming from. And then you go one step further and try to incorporate all of those ideas and thinking into whatever your goal, your initiative, your target. Then you're really sort of building a consensus and you're working together as a team. That is great leadership that I think every time I've been involved in, no matter how small, no matter how large, no matter how challenging, it works. It works. So even now, where you are in your high school career, and some of those of you who are about to launch off to college, in whatever school groups you're in, whatever clubs you're in, whatever internship you're volunteering for, whatever part-time job you might have, if you begin to take a genuine interest in and understand the people around you, the sky is the limit. Absolute limit.
I would say, there's a number of things I want to say, but what's on my mind right now is mentoring, finding a mentor. I remember saying to a few people, "You're my mentor." And they would say, "Huh?" I'm like, "You're my mentor. You're the person that I need guidance from." So it's not necessarily they came to me and said, "Well, Katrina, I'm going to mentor you through this process." Because you will find people are busy going through their own circumstances and may not really be thinking too much about your circumstances. It doesn't mean they do not care. It's just life. However, what I did find, my lesson was that if you name it, it will happen. So when I told these people they were my mentor, then they took it on. Would have happened if I waited for them to, I don't think they would have took me on. But now, to this day, they continue to be my mentor, and they continue to guide me, and I continue to call them. So that's one piece that I am very appreciative of, to know that there are people that are in my life who are giving me guidance and who are dedicated to me personally and professionally. What many of the panelists said, which it was one of the first things that I thought about when thinking about this panel, is your passion. Follow your passion. There's so many students that will come to me and say, well, my parents, and not to, parents, it's okay. My parents say I need to make money. So don't go in this profession. I need to be doing this, because they think this profession doesn't make any money. And so my first question is usually, well, do you know anyone in the profession that you are interested in? Have you talked to anyone in the profession that you are interested in? And usually it's no. It's all rumors that this profession doesn't do this or doesn't do that, because everyone, whether you're from Africa or not, doctors or lawyers are the ones who make all the money. So that should be your aspiration, being a doctor or lawyer. But your passion could pay for what you needed to do. If you are passionate about whatever your career goals are, you will make it work. It would just work out because you want it that badly. You're passionate and you want it to continue to grow. And coupled with that is trust your own gut of the direction you think you want to go in. That was my lesson. I told you, I was in high school and I took this psychology class, and I'm like, whoa, I'm loving this class. This is really good. Went to college, major in psychology, dropped it because the biology piece, which I didn't know because I didn't stick around long enough to find out, was like a small piece of the psychology. If I stuck around, then I would have learned that there's so many more aspects to it. But I think I was also listening to other people. 10 years later, I went back because that was my gut. Like, I knew this was the work I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And the other thing one of the last things I would say that the other panelists have said, go out and do your research. And that's what I learned later on. I wish someone informed me at your age that, Google this, or, go to the library and sit with people and just do your research. Find out for yourself what this career is all about. Or go talk to people, or go to this agency and you can sit down with the CEO, or you can sit down with people who really run this agency who could give you that information. But I didn't do that research, so I didn't find out until later on when I was older and while I was climbing the ladder and trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'm not quite sure if I want to do this for the rest of my life, but right now it's good. That's when I started doing my research, and I said, wow, this says Katrina all over it. There's so many directions. I also consider myself, a person who's really into social action, and it had that aspect. It has working with people, the leadership aspect that I was really interested in. So it has so many different layers of interest, of my passion. And that's why I said earlier, I feel like I am so fortunate to be in the field where I could fulfill so many of my career goals. And this really all came from being passionate about my work, talking to people about different career options, and really talking to people about, I need your guidance. Can you mentor me? Okay. And I guess not too many people will say no, because that wouldn't be nice. But, and so they're there today, and I truly appreciate all that I received today. And I definitely, one last thing, and I definitely feel the need to give it back. So I'm one of those people who say, if you're receiving so much, especially positive energy, it's important to give that back, because you're not too young to be mentors either.
Excuse me. Yes. I was just going to quickly add a few things.
No, of course, no problem.
Okay. So one thing I would say is that just because no one else is doing it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. So like with the restaurant, there are no cooperative restaurants in Boston right now. When I spoke to restaurant owners, when I was first doing my business planning, they thought I was crazy. Why would you share your business and your money with other people? But that's what we need in order to, bridge these inequalities in this country. We're going to need people to share and collaborate, and we're in a very individualistic, competitive country, and maybe that doesn't work for you, there are other ways of doing business, right? Sometimes when you get into these alternative forms, though, you have to do some unlearning, right? Because we're not used to democratic workplaces, right? If someone shows up late, well, 3 strikes, and then this is taken away, and this, right? And that's not how I want to do business, right? And that's not the kind of environment I want to be in as a worker owner and for the other worker owners. So in this, I've also had to do some kind of reformulating of the way I think businesses should run. So I think mentorship is really important, but also there's this side of that people haven't heard of what you're doing. That's okay, you know, and you're gonna have to take risks. And the last thing I would say is not being scared of what's hard for you. When I was in school, I'm dyslexic. So reading out loud was probably the most anxiety-provoking thing possible for me. You know, being put on the spot, and I would switch up words, and so being a teacher, you know, I had to confront all of that, right? Talking in public, you know, reading things in the order that they're written, and even though dyslexia is framed as a deficit, it really isn't, right? It's just a different way of thinking and formulating things. So when you confront what's difficult for you, I mean, you come out with so much strength. And I think, you know, it's not necessarily always what you're trained in or what you're strong at, but maybe it's something you really love. And for me, actually cooking, right? I don't have any formal training in cooking, but I love it. I love sharing health, and that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, you're going to get lots of advice and stuff, but I think echoing what everyone said is really following your instincts, your gut, your passion.
Own your own power. Definitely.
So at this time, I do apologize if we won't have time for Q&A, but I do encourage you all to network and network and network. So at this time, if you don't have class, you can please meet with our panelists and talk to them one-on-one, like hello, introduce yourself, and to get to know one another, okay? So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for your patience. At this time, I'd like to have